I think that's the sort of thing that was alluded to by Immanuel Kant when he was criticizing the notion that all of our information comes from sense data, which would be the pure empirical perspective, right? Because when you encounter the world, you encounter it with a cognitive structure that already has shape. And so it's already in you, this structure. And without that a priori structure, you wouldn't be able to take the formless potential and give it structure. And I think that's something, it's akin in some way to the idea of God the Father, and I'll try to develop that idea more. It's the notion that there's something in all of us that transcends all of us, that's deeply structural, that's part of this ancient, well, I would say evolutionary and cultural process that enables us to grapple with the formless potential and bring forth reality, roughly speaking. And then there's the final element, and that element seems to be something like consciousness itself, the consciousness that actually inheres in the individual. So it's not only that you have a structure, it's that the structure has the capacity for action in the world. And it's like, you're the spirit that gives the dead structure life. It's something like that. And as far as I can tell, the trinitarian notion that characterizes Christianity is something like, well, formless potential, which is never given the status of a deity in Christianity. And then the notion that there's an a priori interpretive structure that's a consequence of our ancient existence as beings. It goes back as far in time as you can go, the notion of a structure. And then the idea of a consciousness that is the tool of that structure and that interacts with the world and gives it reality. And that's the Word, as far as I can tell. And so the notion is that there's a Father, and that's the structure, and there's a Son that's transcendent, that characterizes consciousness itself, and that it's the Son, the speaking of the Son, that is the active principle that turns chaos into order. And God, it's such a sophisticated idea as far as I'm concerned, because, well, there's something about it that's at least phenomenologically accurate, because you do have an interpretive structure and you couldn't understand anything without it. Your very body is an interpretive structure, right? It's been crafted over, let's say, 3 billion years of evolution. Without that, you wouldn't be able to perceive anything. And it's taken a lot of death and struggle and tragedy to produce you, the thing that's capable of encountering this immense chaos that surrounds us, and to transform it into habitable order. And then there's the idea too, of course, that's deeply embedded in the first chapters of Genesis, which is a staggering idea, you know, and certainly not one that's likely, that human beings were made in the image of God, both male and female were made in the image of God. And that's, of course, a very difficult thing to understand, partly because the God that's referred to in those chapters has a kind of polytheistic element, although it's an element that's moving rapidly towards a unified monotheism. But it's not also obvious to me why people would come up with that concept, because I don't really think that when we think about each other, we immediately think God-like.